My name is Elliot Nors. I'm the founder and chief scientist of the Marine Conservation Institute in the United States. And I want to give you a very personal view from my own experience. So please bear with me. I say things that I've seen and done that seem relevant to the situation in Israel, in asking the question, what do we really want to conserve and how can we do it? So the oceans are very important. There are millions of species. They hold nearly all the Earth's water. They cover most of the Earth. Half of the oxygen we breathe is generated by marine life. They provide 20% of our animal protein. They provide new medicines to treat things like cancer, hypertension, chronic pain. They protect us from global warming by absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. They are essential to human survival, and they're in deep trouble. So, because I've been interested in oceans all my life, since I was 5, when I felt I had learned enough to be useful, I pulled together 2 books in 1993 and 2005. And these books are now fairly widely used. The Blue Book is the most cited book in marine conservation. The Marine Conservation Biology book is used in universities around the world to teach graduate students. And so this was a way to help shape the field of marine conservation. And what I have found in working on these books are, we are threatening the oceans 5 ways. We are taking out the life in the sea. We're destroying the ocean habitat. We're adding pollutants. We're introducing invasive alien species. And we're changing the atmosphere in ways that affects the ocean by warming it and making it more acid. And this is an oversimplification, but all of the major human impacts fall in one of these areas. Now, there are signs, and the signs that we see that are worrisome are our fisheries are collapsing, the big animals in the ocean are disappearing, the things that form the habitat, the structure for other ocean life, they're disappearing, and we are seeing the proliferation of many species in the ocean that we don't want here. And Israel is the best example I know of noxious species being a real problem to the health of the oceans. If we put this together, as hard as this is to realize, that the oceans are facing a mass extinction of marine life. We are going to lose a huge fraction of species in the ocean in the lifetimes of my grandchildren, very likely, unless we change our course. And I think this country can make an important contribution to preventing that from happening. So, my colleagues and I have come thousands of kilometers from North America and from Europe to help you with this, if we can. And the question is, if you are open, if you are willing to learn from our experience so that you don't have to repeat our mistakes. So let me tell you about a mistake and the role it played in my life. The year I began graduate school, my PhD research, an oil platform off Santa Barbara, California, exploded and spilled a large amount of oil into the Pacific Ocean. And this was seen on television. It got news coverage in every newspaper. And as a result, the American people demanded change. And so in the very short period of time, just a few years after the Santa Barbara spill, major environmental laws were passed that were completely new or partly new and changed the way we do business in the United States. And of these, the most important is the top one, the National Environmental Policy Act. That law says that any time the federal government acts in a way that has a significant or major environmental impact, we have to analyze beforehand what those impacts are, and we have to put them together in an analysis that is shared with the public, so the public can talk with the government about what those impacts will be. And the government does not make the decision until this process has occurred. So I worked for President Jimmy Carter in the White House as the staff ecologist at the Council on Environmental Quality. You're smiling. I had hair then. Yes. Okay. And a few less pounds also. Yes. But when this happened, it changed my life because I was asked to write a chapter, an analysis of what is happening to life on Earth. And what I realized is that it was happening on several levels of life, and I called it biological diversity. And the idea of biological diversity is now used all around the world. It didn't exist until this, and it changed the way we think about the environment. Biological diversity is diversity at the level of genes within species, diversity among species, diversity among ecosystems. So all of these are kinds of biological diversity. And this helps us understand what we want to conserve. Biodiversity, the biomass that we take out of the ocean or fisheries, and the ecosystem services like protecting the shoreline, like these sabellariid reefs do right off the Perez Center that you see. They protect the shoreline from waves, producing oxygen, removing carbon dioxide. These are the things we want to conserve. And when I was working for the president, I began working to win protection for key places in the ocean. The idea of marine protected areas was not new then. It started in around 1960. But that's what our focus was. Later, I founded the Marine Conservation Institute, and one of the early things we did was to get President Clinton to establish a national system of marine protected areas. The problem with many marine protected areas, though, is that they're not really protected. They're not strongly protected. The only kinds of marine protected areas that we know work well is no-take marine reserves, no extraction. People can go there, but they can't do anything that causes harm. Now, my friend Callum Roberts and Julie Hawkins put this map together 12 years ago, and it shows the tiny area. Do we have a laser? No, we don't. The tiny area is that red dot of no-take marine reserves in the world. A tiny, tiny fraction, 0.1% of the world's oceans were then protected. So we wanted to change this, and in 2006, my organization persuaded President Bush to protect a colossal area in Hawaii, in the waters of the Pacific Ocean, and then in 2009, 2 more areas. And these areas, and they're in yellow here, are 21 times the size of Israel. The United States is blessed with a large amount of ocean under our control. But this changed the world. The area in Hawaii, the long one up there, became the largest strongly protected area in the world's oceans. And yet, I also see the great power in strongly protected areas in the waters of Catalonia, where the Ilmed are less than 1 square kilometer, but there is no fishing there, and it is filled with animals like that beautiful grouper. So, in 2004, I helped pull together a group of very smart people, including Dr. Charles Ehler. Andy, where are you? I don't see you. Dr. Andy Rosenberg, and others in different fields to talk about how we could do ocean zoning in the United States to help our economy and environment. And those two things go together, economy and environment. We wanted to win. And so we pulled together a paper that said, we now understand the problem for the first time. The biologists and economists and anthropologists and lawyers talked to each other across our disciplinary boundaries, and we think we figured it out. And here are the findings. The way we govern our oceans doesn't work in managing oceans because the governance is fragmented. We have different agencies managing different activities. So there are gaps in authority and there are overlaps. From everything I have heard, Israel brilliantly illustrates the same thing. So Israel and the United States, as in many things, are together on this. And the problem is that governance and natural processes are working on different spatial and temporal scales. And we think that comprehensive ecosystem-based planning and management using zoning can make this less of a problem. So Larry Crowder, a colleague, one of our members, and I established the key principles in this paper. What are the ecological principles that are essential for marine spatial planning? This was in a volume put together by Dr. Ehler. We applied them to a sector that we knew more about than others, and that is fisheries. And again, what we see again and again and again is that there's an essential difference. On land, you always know who the owner is, or the traditional user is. You know who has management authority for the land. But in the sea, everybody goes everywhere, and this makes for conflict. You don't know who makes the decisions, because on gas drilling you have one decision, on fishing you have another, on shipping you have another, on protection of the environment you have another. Now, the word in Yiddish, because I don't know any Hebrew, is mishmash, right? Okay, it doesn't work. Because the oceans are a mosaic of natural ecosystems and human uses. We have to understand that each of these tiles represents something that can be similar or different to the next tile. These tiles are tesserae, and you need to manage each tessera different, the way that's appropriate, and it may be different from different tesserae. If you see what I'm saying, natural ecosystems and human uses. So America's landscape is a mosaic, and what we have found is that there are certain things that don't go well together. You don't build a power plant next to the Grand Canyon. You don't have a pornography store next to an elementary school. This is basic, again, my Yiddish is, I have no Hebrew, seichel, right? And ecosystem-based spatial planning and zoning addresses the fact that the oceans are spatially heterogeneous. It separates incompatible uses, and it makes win-win outcomes possible. We want users and conservationists to both win. It must never be that conservationists win and there's no uses in the entire ocean. That's not good. It must never be that everything is devoted to human use and you haven't conserved enough. President Obama put out the first proposal for a national ocean policy for the United States in 2009. And it has moved forward less well than we had liked because of opposition from his opponents in Congress and in certain industries. But a national ocean policy can change the game. So here are the principles I think that are really important. You have to have two goals. You want to protect and recover ecosystem services, biodiversity, and you want to help the economy. You have to have a strong legal basis and adequate funding, as Nir pointed out. You need to know what your biogeography is. You need to delineate the bioregions and zone them, and in every one there has to be adequate representation of no-take marine reserves. Should I say that again? Okay, you got my point. You have to separate uses that are not compatible with one another. If they can't occur in the same place, you have to separate them. You need to use the latest natural and social science. And if you don't have good science, you should do precautionary measurement. If you don't know what's going to happen, play it safe. Okay? You make your planning process transparent and inclusive so that your citizens are determining their future. It's not just industries or government that represents the industries. You have to represent the citizenry. And finally, as you learn new things, you change what you do. Now, the best thing that's ever been written, as far as I'm concerned, I wish I could say it was mine, but it was written by Dr. Ehler and Fanny Duvert. And this document is the how to do it document on how to do marine spatial planning. And I think it's brilliant. And if you only read one thing on this, don't read my stuff, read that. And that leads to a big question. I'm very experienced in Israel. I've been here a week, okay? But what I can tell from all that I've known about Israel in the past and all I've seen since I've been here is you are strong, you are smart, you are very stubborn, you have lots of opinions. You can make things happen if you choose to. And the question is, can you use the insights you are going to hear from these speakers to safeguard your incredible, beautiful Mediterranean? Now, if you have people who tell you, no, it's too difficult, we can't do this, well, there's a word that I can think of that has to do with male cattle and what passes through them. And I would say David Ben-Gurion said it more gently than I did, okay? But the answer is no. It can be done and it must be done. Or as another person said, who was a hero of mine, Abba Iban, history teaches us that men and nations behave wisely once they have exhausted all other alternatives. Listen to your Abba. Listen to your Abba. His wisdom is profound. I'm not an Israeli, but I have a stake in your success. I want to see you succeed. 2,000 years ago, the fishes of the waters off Israel were depicted in this Roman mosaic. Think fish. I saw your waters yesterday. They're beautiful, they're clear, and I have never, ever seen waters anywhere more devoid of fish. Why is this? Is this what you want? Do you want to make it different? Please do so fast while there's still time. Toda.